This stuff that the trending topics today in the SEC. Rob Browne, executive producer Brendan Martin, lots to talk about. And Brendan, uh, you got a TV, and everybody does. You got a bunch of them. This SEC basketball is just as good as. And I'm
Fire.
with you though. We can't say it's the best ever till the conference goes deep into the tournament and really brings home a trophy. But
Yeah.
we're going to talk with Coach Matt Dean, ULM AD John Hartwell, Channel 23 Sports Director, WVUA in Tuscaloosa, host of, along with Rodney Orr of Tider Insider. Gary Harris is back with us. And hey, headlines, Brendan. Missouri's big win over Oklahoma last night. Arkansas wins again on the road at LSU. Ole Miss, another narrow victory. Brendan, South Carolina hadn't won a conference game, but when you go to Columbia, you're getting out by 2 or 3 points. I mean, Auburn, number one, barely got out alive, and they're winless. That's the strength of this league. Look, NIL, NCAA updates. We'll talk about it. So let's get started and bring in Coach Matt Dean, John Hartwell hopping on in just a moment. Gentlemen.
Make sure you hit that QR code at the bottom on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at Rob Browne _. You'll get notifications when we are live. You can follow us on YouTube and Facebook. Facebook's at Sidelines. Just search us. You can find us. We simulcast with the Buddy Martin Show. We are SEC Sidelines Sports Network. So check us out. So much more exciting things to come in the future, guys. So make sure you follow now while it's free. It's free to follow now. It may not always be free.
I know.
Hey, Matt Dean. How are you, sir?
It's great to be on with you guys. What a great morning, and what a great league. I mean, it's been fun watching this basketball season play out. And Brendan, I thought of you last weekend when Florida went to Auburn and just absolutely throttled the number one team in the country. And I still believe they're going to be the number one team in the country. But it just shows you, like we've talked about all season, how good Florida is. I think after being banged up a little bit, they had a week off after that Tennessee loss where it was a rough offensive performance. Yeah. And they fixed some things. And clearly the Gators are tremendous. I thought it was a nice win the other night at Starkville as well. And then last night, you mentioned Ole Miss, Rob. They barely won at LSU. I think they outscored them 13-0 in the last 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of close games in South Carolina. But the major thing is, and John will tell you, when you go on the road, if you get a win on the road, you're really working. It's a gold bar. So it's just really fun. And Saturday, Auburn, Alabama, that's going to be outstanding, right?
Yeah. Well, you lose at home, you got to win 2 on the road really to hold serve. That's how tough this league is. And I was not shocked. I took Florida to cover too. I was like, everything is in Auburn's favor. It's at home and all that. But what do I always say about home games? You better watch out because you're most likely to get mugged in your own driveway. You got to think like that. You got to be proactive versus reactive. And Florida, Auburn jumped on top early, but Florida, with that size and that depth, and Walter Clayton Jr., he may be Janai Broom's great player. Walter Clayton, when he's healthy, might be the best player. That's a tough debate right there. I don't think it's tough, but it's debatable.
Yeah. Well, John Hartwell, welcome to the show, by the way. John, good question for you and for Matt. I think these players are obviously fantastic athletes. I never want to take away from it. But, when you look at the Auburn win, that was a rebounding defensive. Everyone's playing defense. Everyone's, following shots. Everyone's banging the boards. How much is that is Todd Golden, John Hartwell? And good morning to you, sir.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Great to join you as always. I got to actually watch a lot of that Auburn, Florida game the other day, and I had seen bits and pieces of Florida this year. But here's what impressed me a ton. They're very athletic, but their ball movement on the offensive end is maybe as good as I've seen in a long time. And one of the things, and this goes back to, middle school coaching, they do a great job of moving the ball without dribbling. That they have a lot of touch passes without ever letting the ball hit the hardwood. And man, they took it to Auburn. Obviously, Auburn, made a run in that second half. But those two teams right there are two Final Four teams in the right situation. But they're, as Rob talked about, Auburn being a little bit, flat early on. The college basketball season is a grind. When you play, 31, 32 regular season games, then you have a conference tournament and you play 3 or 4, and then you get into NCAA play. We talked about this last week. Peaking at the right time is really important. But the other thing, there are so many variables, that can impact a game, whether with an individual, with 2 or 3 guys on the team, whatever it may be, that when you have elite talent versus elite talent, that can be the difference in the game. If you're playing somebody that's elite talent and the other team is not as good, you can overcome those things. But when you've got 2 elite level talent teams playing each other, the margin of victory is so razor thin.
Well, one thing, and I don't want to say, I always am quick to give credit to the other team. Auburn was flat. Florida didn't let Auburn get into their game. And if you didn't know it, you would think Janai Broome and Chad Baker-Mazara didn't play in the game. When you get beat, it's not that you had a bad night. That's not fair. You have to credit the team that beat your ass. And Florida did that to Auburn soundly. I mean, they if you look at the last 25, 30 games between Auburn and Florida, Florida has been so dominant in that series, and Auburn got that win in the SEC tournament last year. That was huge. But Auburn, their worst nightmares are those big, tall teams with depth that lean on you and the rebounding. They got to do a better job there. But, guys, look at last night. Let's just start. Y'all watched Ole Miss going into South Carolina. That's a winless team. Lamont Paris last year. Remember how South Carolina was the toast of the SEC until they went to Auburn and lost by 40 points. How do you keep a team together? He's doing it, South Carolina, but they find ways to lose versus finding excuses to win.
Well, for me, when I was having tough years, this time of year, you have to reset your goals, because obviously right now when you're winless in the league, you're not looking like you're going to the NCAA tournament. It's not happening unless you make a deep run in the SEC tournament. Yeah. So you have to readjust your goals. You also you also have to really have some perspective about, okay, from an evaluation standpoint, what do I have? As a coach, I'm always looking forward. Something's not right. So you have to look from within and really look at the future in terms of recruitment and what you're going to do to make this better for the future, because you can't have this happen regardless of how tough the league is. This can't happen this often or else you'll be out of a job. John, I would think you'd probably agree with that. And they're going to have to figure out some things. And you want to say, if we got 6 games left, guys, obviously we got to hit our first win, but how can we finish strong?
Yeah.
And I want to go back quickly to the Auburn-Florida game. One of the things I think that, I'm not saying Bruce Pearl wanted a loss, but sometimes a loss can help you refocus your team in the video room, and you can see, okay, we didn't do this very well as we head to the SEC tournament, as we try to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. What did Florida give us on tape that's going to help us the next time we play them or another quality opponent? And I think that's something that we'll see Saturday when they play Alabama.
Yeah. I got a question from Shoney in Valdosta, Georgia, John, and I went to school with Shoney. I love this guy. Ask John Hartwell how important basketball conference tournament is in the Sun Belt for your program, because the tournaments are fun. I mean, I remember in 78, 79 when they started coming back in the SEC after a hiatus since 1952, and I can't get enough basketball, but that's just me.
Yeah, it's really important here. And, as you guys know, I'm usually brutally honest. Our league's got to get better in both men's and women's basketball. Right now, we're basically a one bid league. And I know there were a couple of articles this past weekend because we had some of our teams participating in the second half of our MAC Sunbelt Challenge last Saturday, and really kind of the attitude and commentary from coaches in both leagues was, hey, this really isn't doing us any good in mid-February, because neither league is really in danger of getting two teams in the tournament. And we've talked about that as ADs, just like when I was the AD in the Mountain West Conference, and they had outlined steps that the institutions within that league had to take for the betterment of basketball. And obviously the Mountain West, whether it's Utah State or San Diego State or New Mexico, Colorado State, Boise, have benefited from that. And so back to the original question, it's extremely important, because whoever wins our league tournament is likely going to be the only tournament team. Now, I will say this, our league, the Sun Belt, changed formats this year to join only the West Coast Conference as the only other league that does this. So it places further emphasis on regular season play.
Yeah.
So your top two seeds on both the men's and women's side get buys all the way to the semifinals. So that's a huge benefit to those two teams, because you really only have to win 2 games to win the tournament, but it also protects what you did during the regular season. So like I said, this will be the first year of that. Our tournament returns to Pensacola, both on the men's and women's side, in early March. Great venue there. Pensacola's done a good job.
Oh yeah.
Where we stand right now, our men's coach has already announced his retirement. So I am full speed in the search mode right now. Some of the guys I'm talking to obviously have a chance to play on into the tournament. In that mode, hey, I want to give just a couple of things, because I've been in that space. When you look at people's success or lack thereof, there are some things happening. I know you have a lot of folks in Oxford who listen to this. The Ole Miss faithful right now are scared to death that the Indiana Hoosiers are making a big run at Chris Beard. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And down here in the great state of Louisiana, whispers coming out of Baton Rouge, hey, could we see a push for the return of Will Wade and the success that he's had at McNeese to come back to LSU based on their lack of a high level of wins over the last couple of years.
Well, John, speaking of that, Indiana going to make a run at Chris Beard. Wow, that's just a couple of years ago when Yancey Porter broke the story on here that don't be surprised if Ole Miss doesn't go get Chris Beard. So big story, great insight. Man, there's only two athletic directors can do on this show. Okay, we talked about Ole Miss getting that win by the skin of their teeth, and it's tough to go to South Carolina and get a win. Missouri last night beats Oklahoma like 82-58, I think. But remember last year, guys, Missouri was so bad. They were 0-18 in the regular season, but they had to extend it into the tournament. They lost and went 0-19. And now look at the kind of season they're having. Matt, as a coach, you'll always be a coach because you were a coach.
As I want to be.
It's like someone that was a general in the Army when they retire. You don't call them Bubba, I met General Richard Clark, who's the head of the College Football Playoff Committee back at media days. And he goes, Rob, just call me Richard. And I said, no, sir. You're a lieutenant general in the Air Force. You've earned that. You'll always be General Clark. But talk about the mindset, what Dennis Gates has done, because Missouri's got a damn good team.
Kudos to him. I've been there. I haven't been 0-19 in league play, but what a tremendous job. And if you look at what you have to do in those situations, it's probably no different than South Carolina now. You're looking forward. And the year when my team probably excelled the least on the floor was the year I excelled the most in recruiting. And recruiting's everything. We all feel like, from an X&O standpoint, a lot of us do similar things. We go to clinics, we talk to each other, we watch tape, we have synergy, we break down. everything ridiculously, Rob. You're going to get possessions underneath out of bounds. What's my top 10 plays there, 100 plays, whatever. Everything's on tape. What you have to do is have a plan. And I think now if you look at Missouri, it's a combination of the portal and high school recruiting.
Yeah.
And you have to go get players, Rob. And right now, if I'm South Carolina, what I just mentioned a few seconds ago, that's what he's thinking about. Okay, how can I make this better next year so I don't have a tough conversation with my athletic director and I'm looking for another job? Because you were right. Last year, he was the darling. So you have to be looking forward. You have to have sometimes a self-evaluation of your program. And what I would often do is if I had colleagues that were out of the game that I trusted, I would say, hey, come watch my team play. Come watch my team practice. Here's my synergy code. Come watch us on tape. What are you seeing? Because sometimes you are blinded from within about the product. And I think it's very healthy to reach out to people you trust to help you with a self-scout and say, hey, you're missing a really strong wing, or you need a better point guard play. And I think that's very healthy. And I think that happens at every program in the country. And I'm sure John's probably doing some self-exploration down there about what am I looking for in my next leader? What's the most important things? Because, I went through it 5 years ago. We have always had a strong tradition in men's basketball at Rhodes College. I worked for a Hall of Fame coach, and we had hired a young coach. And for 2 years, historically, you could go back to the 60s. That's how bad it was for us. And I made a tough decision, and I went a different direction. I went outside the box. I hired a Division I assistant. And 3 years later, we had, 18 wins. So there's things you have to do as a head coach to move forward so your administration is confident you have a plan to get out of the spin cycle.
Yeah, and I will say this. Every coach I've ever had in my life and every time I've ever coached people in cross-country, track and field, running, I'll say how you finish a race is how you approach going to bed that night and how you approach getting up the next day and how you approach practice. Even if you're getting the hell beat out of you, you come running off that field and don't you ever have your head hanging down. You know what? You'll never accomplish anything laying in bed hitting the snooze button. Got a much better chance fighting on your feet. John Hartwell, let's switch to Arkansas and John Calipari. This guy's got a lot of coaching in him. He inherited basically a ghost chamber of a locker room when he got to Fayetteville. But when you got the Tysons and people like that having your back financially, which they do at Arkansas, they're going to be better. Now, if anybody can pronounce Zvonimir Ivisic, I'm not. Can I buy a vowel for $50?
Call
John?
him Z.
Yeah, call him Z. Big Z. But they go out and get a win last night, 70-58 on the road at LSU. Because it's John Calipari in Arkansas, which has a great tradition of basketball. Joe Lunardi's like, hey, if they can win another game or two, they're in the conversation. That is what makes this so much fun is, number one, you want to get to the tournament, but you got to do something when you get there. But let's talk about Arkansas and LSU. We have Coach John Brady on with us a lot. That's another team. They've got talent. They just can't seem to close the deals.
Yeah, and you talked about South Carolina a little bit earlier, and the mental part of the game is really significant. And teams get in a rut of losing. It doesn't matter how far ahead you get, and it doesn't matter the sport. But another team starts making a run at them, as good teams are going to do, and all of a sudden you can see the body language on the players on the court, players on the bench. And it's like, oh gosh, here we go again. Can we stop this? And they play to not lose as opposed to playing to win. And when you play to not lose, you're in deep trouble. You are back on your heels right there. And again, that permeates throughout the team. That's not just one guy. And what you've got to have to do to break that mold is you've got to have a breakthrough moment, or you've got to have somebody step up and say, I'll be damned if we're going to lose again. And when you don't have that go-to guy who wants that moment, you're in trouble, and it's hard to break that cycle.
Yeah. All right, here's something. Brendan sends me a lot of really important trending topics that are out there. NIL and Title IX developments. I don't know if y'all are aware of this. You probably are. U.S. Department of Education has rescinded guidance issued during the final days of the previous president that was in the White House, which had stated that name, image, and likeness compensation for student athletes should be considered as athletic financial assistance and thus be distributed equally between men's and women's programs under Title IX. The current administration, President Trump, argues that this guidance was overly burdensome and lacked legal justification. Anyone want to take a stab at that? Because we got several more topics before Gary gets on, but the world is awaiting y'all's reply because I don't know what to say.
Yeah, because we've been dealing with this, and quite honestly, when the previous administration in Washington came out with that guidance, everyone in college athletics, I think, said, "Hey, let's pump the brakes on this. Let's see what the transition and the new administration brings." And really, from the get-go, the intention has been for this revenue share really to be aligned more with where the revenue is generated from, as opposed to general scholarship dollars flowing through the university, which obviously have to have the Title IX implications to those. So, and there's a small variance of this number, but for the most part, roughly 85% of the revenue driven from television contracts, corporate sponsorships at the conference level, which is the pass-through mechanism to the schools, is generated from football. And so, and then roughly 10% men's basketball, maybe 1 or 2% women's basketball, 1 or 2% baseball, and then, a percent, maybe 1.5% across all of your other sports. So if you take that model, which was the original intent, obviously that's going to not fall in line with Title IX numbers. And that's been the intent all along. I know this is going to be subject to a whole nother litany of lawsuits along the way. But that's really the mindset that it came from. And, worth noting too, from the House settlement. So if you look at the past 10 years pre-NIL, which these damages are being paid out, it mirrors that too. So the vast majority of student athletes, right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever your feeling is on this, track and field kids, whether they're at, LSU or whether they're at ULM, this is not a get rich quick scheme. There are very few dollars to spread amongst those student athletes, strictly because they're going back to the premise, where were these dollars generated from?
Yeah. Point of origination. It's kind of like the look back clause the IRS has on a state settling 3 to 5 years. If you got some elderly person who is dying, sometimes they start giving money away left and right. And, all of a sudden it's like, you were worth $20 million 2 years ago. Where did it all go? I gave it to ULM, to John Hartwell, the esteemed
the check's
athletic
still
director.
In the mail, though, right? The check's lost somewhere between Memphis and Monroe.
Hey, look, the one thing that, because of Venmo and Cash App and stuff like that now, I got to tell you, Coach Ellis Johnson, who's on this show a lot, he is such a good man. He wanted to donate money to Audrey's Christmas Angels when she did that. He goes, I don't do Venmo, I don't like them, but I do Cash App. So I added the Cash App, and he sent a bunch of money. I mean, but you don't ever hear the checks in the mail now. So just Venmo it to me. So that's kind of an interesting take on it. God, the insight that we get from the big guy from UMS High School in Mobile, the port city, where Will Johnson always says, Brown, I don't eat seafood if it's ever been frozen, because it's not really seafood. I think about what I would give right now to be down at Constantine's having a bowl of their gumbo. And it ain't gumbo, ladies and gentlemen. unless it's got a crab claw in it and a bay leaf or two. Isn't that right, John?
Don't forget the West Indies salad too.
Oh.
That's a must have as well.
I learned how to make the West Indies crab salad as a kid down in Destin at Silver Dunes because my parents would stay out there all day. And then somehow when George would pick up the umbrellas at about 5 or 5:15, that's how we learned how to tell time as kids. Then it was cocktail hour till the sun went down. So I learned we would go crabbing on the bridge there in Destin with those Ben Franklin crab traps and go get some of that Sanderson Farms chicken and tie it in there and catch those blue crabs and boil them and make the West Indies crab salad. That is about as good as it gets. Matt Dean, I stopped by Alex's Tavern yesterday on the way out of Memphis to see Yvette in there. Ordered I was with my brother-in-law. He'd never been. He is hooked. He got some of the sweet heat wings. You know, you're eating them and all of a sudden steam's coming out of the side of your head. You're like, ah! But Matt, I got to add, this is great insight. And when you got a producer like Brendan Martin, it's like having, again, Michelangelo is your mentor if you're an art student, okay? I want to ask you, they're talking about women's flag football coming into college. Wow.
I want to coach it.
Yeah. I mean, if they do that it's not full contact.
No.
But it's flag football. But, you know, if they're going to bring that back, man, I'd love to see wrestling come back into the SEC because it'd be cool. But the more sports, the better is how I look at it because the more people we got being active, the better we are as a country.
Listen, I want to add on to what John said. You know, it's true with the revenue generation, how it breaks down. I saw a statistic, John, the other day. We have, the top 10 NIL valuations of women's athletes right now in the NCAA is pretty incredible too. Though obviously there's a lot of money in football. Yeah. One of the highest valuations NIL right now is a gymnast in LSU, right? So yeah, it makes sense to me that we add women's flag football. I think you would make an argument that it could become popular. I'm not saying it's going to compete with the TV ratings for college football. Don't get me wrong, but I do like the opportunity for more women's sports. I think that's one of the things. You know, we never added beach volleyball at Rhodes. We talked about it. We talked about gymnastics. The thing that people don't realize about gymnastics is, you know, you got to have big space. You got to have a lot of equipment. And sometimes from a facility standpoint, you have to go off campus to do these type of things. Yeah. I grew up in a state of Iowa where wrestling was king. Oh. And then I remember in the late 80s, we dropped wrestling at Drake at my alma mater. We were 17th in the country in wrestling, and we dropped it. So you are seeing things right now from a creative standpoint that would not shock me. Beach volleyball has become very popular in the NCAA model. I think flag football would be a great opportunity. One of the things we've talked about, I'm surprised we haven't added bowling here, to be honest with you, because you drive to an alley, you bowl, and it doesn't require a ton of upfront inventory.
Well, get used to it, guys, because flag football is an Olympic sport in Los Angeles as of 2028.
I want to coach.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, I know this. Yeah. Being an Iowa guy and bowling was, pretty popular. Yeah, I got to know this. Do you have your own bag, ball, shoes, and a bowling shirt with your name and script on it?
Damn. So, John,
you better have it.
Most of that, John, I do have. All the way up until my early 40s, I was in a bowling league. We had some bowling leagues here in Memphis, and I was actually one 2 or 3 years ago. So I am proud. I have a 700 patch for a 700 series. I've never been close to a perfect game, but I have rolled in the high 250s. And outside of basketball, my parents used to drop me off Saturday mornings at 9:00 at the bowling alley on Saturdays, and I would stay there for 3 hours and then play hoops later. So, yes, it's in my culture. The weather was so doggone cold, John, we had to do something indoors, and bowling was an activity.
Hey,
the big question, did they have hams on draft at the bowling alley you rolled at?
Oh, yes.
They did, but I was too young at that time to partake legally.
Well, I'll tell you, my friend –
go ahead.
My friend Chip Greer's mother's in her late 80s. She averages a 182 bowling.
That's amazing.
Brendan.
I was just going to say we have the actual picture of you, John, back when you were younger bowling. I pulled it up. I didn't know. I mean, you got some really great form there,
It
and
is
I
good
think you look
form.
great, man. Really do.
Just analyzing that'd be a hell of a twist, a curve on your ball if
Yeah,
you're
look at
over
that.
at
I
the
mean,
far
look at that.
left-hand side of the
Look
lane.
at that
You're
leg
throwing it
action.
Look at
right-handed.
that form.
That's got to be a reverse knuckleball to get it anywhere near the center pin.
You know what's funny is it's an optical illusion because you really can't tell what the black corduroy pants, like what's going on there. But they call that the owl because he twists almost 360 degrees with his head all the way around his head right there. That's a pretty amazing.
That is look. How
the
about the
Nice work,
white
Brendan.
socks? The white socks there, Matt. That's I've been to Iowa.
He's an
many
athlete.
times.
He's an athlete, Rob. He's got two. That's athlete socks. He's
Hey.
probably sponsored.
Bowling. We were in a bowling league in Memphis, and we'd go up there on Wednesday nights, and we got to where we were drinking so much beer. I took a smaller ball, and I didn't realize, and I threw it, and it went airborne and smashed in, and broke the thing, and they had to go underneath and fix it. And the bowl, we didn't bowl there much longer, but
I guess not.
but I didn't mean to. But bowling is fun. And
I got to say something about bowling
Yeah.
too. So what you don't understand about, well, you probably understand this, but the beauty of bowling in a team sport is I can be crappy and I'm going to be assigned a handicap and I have an average. If I can go and exceed my average, I am helping my team and we have a chance to win the series. I'm telling you, it's pretty cool.
It is. It's fun to watch. Look, my favorite movie, one of them is Kingpin. I mean, my kids, we quote Kingpin. You know, why does a bowler need a manager? Why does a bowler need a man? You need a friend, somebody you can trust. That's one of the great movies. All right, back in line here before Gary gets on. For both of y'all, what I'm starting to see happening, a trend is people are they love the games, and there's starting to be some compartmentalization to some extent. Like, okay, we'll put those two topics, NIL and the portal, over on the side, and I'm just going to pull for my team. I'm not going to get all caught up in it. I'll give them $25 or $30 a month. I'll do my part. Are y'all starting to see that? Because I feel it happening. Somebody, John, Brendan?
Yeah, I think you still have a lot of people philosophically out there who say, "Hey, this is college athletics. They're getting a lot of them are getting a scholarship. They're getting their school paid for. They're having all these great benefits." Which is all true. You can't dispute that. But times have changed, just like they have in every other aspect of life. And if you truly want to see your favorite institution, your alma mater have success, if you don't get into the NIL game, it's gonna, unless you decide to drop down to Division III, you're not, and you still have it to some extent there. It's going to be near impossible to have success. So, and I think some other things are being done now that it can flow through the institution. You know, you still got to be a little creative, but come July 1, there's going to be a much easier avenue for donations that route through the university that are earmarked for NIL or for additional funding for student athletes. It is going to have an easier opportunity to be tax deductible. You don't have to send it through the collectives who, the ones early on that were established as 501c3s, and the IRS has come back and said, no, you can't take a deduction for just a pass-through entity for paying players. But there is a way, people are getting creative with that and the ability to flow it through the university. So I do think you're seeing more and more people get on board with it. As we have discussions with donors and prospective donors, you're still going to have a segment of your fan base and those donors who are absolutely dead set against giving to NIL. And for those, we'll continue to channel those to, hey, you can do a scholarship endowment. Hey, you can give to this capital campaign, any of those things. But I do, because it's not such a foreign concept anymore, and NIL is becoming a way of the world in college athletics. I do believe it's becoming more accepted.
Yeah, I agree. Great insight, man. Let's bring in Gary Harris from Tuscaloosa, one of the absolute best in the business. Drill down local from 40,000 feet above, and you'll find, again, an elite reporter, sports director, Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa, host of a great show from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday on Tide 100.9, and co-host with Rodney Orr of Tider Insider. Tuesday nights at 6:30. Catch it on YouTube and all over. It is a great show. 30 minutes, 22 minutes of content on Alabama and anything else like it anywhere. Gary, how you doing this morning?
Doing well. Glad to be back with you guys. I've been
same here,
Rob,
ditto.
As you know, been dealing with a little bit of a health issue, and I was told yesterday that I do have prostate cancer, but the doctor said that it's the smallest sample that he has really ever seen, and so we're going to monitor it through active surveillance, and if I feel anything weird, I'll call, but otherwise I'm going to see him again in 6 months and, get another PSA screening and then have an MRI at a year, surveillance biopsy at 18 months. So I feel blessed, to be honest with you, because when you're, when your PSA shoots up and then you have a MRI and they see an area of concern and then you have a biopsy, you're expecting worse news. So I feel good. I feel great. And like I said, he said technically, based on the, they do the biopsy, and I still don't really understand how it works, but the 20-something samples that they look at, only one of them had any sign of prostate cancer at all. So we're gonna do active surveillance on it. So I'm good to go. So good to be with you guys.
Hey, absolutely. I will give you the prayers of Saint Peregrine, the patron saint of all cancer patients, for you every day. So absolutely great news to hear.
Yeah.
And Gary, man, we've been having a great discussion about what's going on in the SEC basketball race. A lot of stuff happening with the NCAA, Title IX, NIL, big news. Got a big one this weekend in Tuscaloosa.
The biggest.
I mean,
it's the biggest basketball game in the history of the state of Alabama. First of all, you don't get 1 versus 2 very often anywhere.
No,
this is rare. Period. So. But to have it in what is, quote unquote, a football state, and even though, Rob, as you and I have discussed throughout the years, Alabama and Auburn have both had some really good teams. In fact, you go all the way back to the Rocket 8 for Alabama. That team, went undefeated in the SEC and had it been allowed to play in the NCAA tournament. Weird rule kept them out that year, even though they beat Rupp and they, and as we've discussed, CM Newton had some Final Four caliber teams. Wimp Sanderson had a couple Final Four caliber teams. I think Mark Gottfried had a Final Four caliber team or two. And then Nate Oates had a couple before Alabama finally made it, and that team that he took to the Final Four last year, I would argue was not a top 10 Alabama team by any means during the regular season, but that was the first team that got in the tournament and made the run. So we know what Auburn's done under Bruce Pearl. We know what Alabama's done under Nate Oates. So the games have been big anyway for the last several years. But for it to crescendo the way it's going to crescendo Saturday afternoon with 1 versus 2, either way you look at it. I usually use the AP poll, which has Auburn 1 and Alabama 2, but in the coaches poll, it's flip-flopped. Both only have 1 loss in the SEC. Yeah. Both are undefeated in the SEC on the road. Both have complete teams. I think Auburn, maybe if you just looked at every element of a basketball team, you'd say might be a little more complete than Alabama. But I think this, and I've said this all along, I still think Alabama has the highest ceiling of any team in the country. And you saw ghosts of it the other night against Texas. When they shoot the ball, because they haven't shot the ball from 3 this year the way Nate Oates teams normally shoot it. Yeah. When they're making threes like that, they make 17 threes now. I don't think anybody's going to beat them. Now, they haven't made 17 threes regularly. Nobody does. But they scored 103 on the road. They've scored 85 or more in 8 straight road games. They scored 85 at Arkansas when they didn't shoot it well. And then the other night, they still had 17 turnovers. 17 turnovers. And you score, Matt and John both can speak to that as, from athletic backgrounds. You turn it over 17 times and you score 103 points. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. They are a turnover-prone team. So I look at Alabama and with the explosiveness of their offense, and they're not a bad defensive team by any means, I think, and they're a good rebounding team. Let's say that you have 8 or 9 turnovers in a game. And, so I think it's going to be an incredible game on Saturday afternoon. Right now, I could go either way as far as trying to handicap it and figure out. But we know this, the winner of this game is going to have a leg up in the SEC. They'll be in first place. Now, Alabama still has to go to Auburn at the end of the year. So I would say from that standpoint, it's a more important game from Alabama because you don't want to lose at home, knowing you still got to go to Auburn. At the same time, if Alabama wins, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Auburn, to return the favor at the end of the year. So it's got everything you're looking for. It's got drama. It's got two high-profile coaches that are both dynamic, competitive. I think there's a lot of respect between the two coaches at the same time. They know what they're playing for and they're coaching for. And in any other year, probably in the SEC, either one of these teams with the record they have in league would probably have, a nice lead in the conference. Yeah. But this year, they're tied and there's a lot of other teams, just right behind. So it's got it all, Rob. I mean, the excitement level here, the only thing we were worried about was a couple of days ago, they were talking about a chance for some severe weather. Now, thankfully, that's been pushed back to later Saturday night because even though it's an indoor sport, if there's tornadoes and things like that in the area, it's going to impact your people getting to the game. So, but everything looks good right now.
No, it does. And I know, John, you've got to bounce off here in just a minute. So throw your comments in here. But I will say the governor, Kay Ivey, Meemaw, she's got to be loving this for the state because no matter what happens, basketball has been elevated like never before in the Yellowhammer State, John Hartwell.
Yeah, no question. And, sorry, I got to run here in a couple of minutes. First off, most importantly, Gary, prayers up to you, my man.
Thanks,
and
buddy.
Good luck with that. But your attitude, I can just tell your attitude, is incredible, and prayers to a speedy recovery from that. What a game. And as a basketball guy with a basketball background and an Alabama native, I'm super excited about this and the spotlight that it's putting on the state. Here's the other thing that I think is important here. I know we've still got about 3 weeks of regular season left and then the tournament, but it's not too early to start talking about the advantage the winner of this game is going to have as it relates to a potential number one seed in the NCAA tournament and staying potentially in the South region. So you don't have to go to LA or wherever, the regionals are to play. And that's a huge deal, not only for travel for your team, but also for the ability for your fans to be there. So, I know there's a lot of basketball left, both regular season and SEC tournament, but I don't think it's too early to start looking at those things, especially when, again, you've got number one versus number two. But yeah, guys, as always, appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.
Let them know how they can follow you.
Yes. ULMWarhawks.com. Again, we're busy as everybody is now. Not only do you have men's and women's basketball down the home stretch of regular season, softball kicked off. We go to Ruston today to play Louisiana Tech. Baseball starts off tomorrow with 3-game home series with Eastern Illinois. A lot, tennis, track and field, all of those things going on. Busy spring. John_Hartwell on X. And as always, great to visit with you guys. Have a great week. Take care.
Ditto.
Thanks,
38,
John.
man. Take care. Hey, let me say something real quick about Winter Timber Outdoors. Winter Timber Outdoors, located in Athens, Alabama, open every day of the week. Any of the shooting sports that you do, and turkey season is coming up on us, guys. They've got everything you need, all the camo patterns, the blinds, the ground blinds for turkey hunting. As MJ says, turkey hunting a turkey is like chasing a ghost. It is tough. They've got everything you need. Turkey calls, over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns in the store. They're growing in the footprint that is the Southeastern Conference. They'll open their store in Auburn in June. They're looking in Fayetteville, Athens. They're looking in the Memphis market. Get excited, folks. This is owned by people in the South. I know these people. They're first-class outdoors folks that just know what they're doing. You will get what you need when you go there. Take a picture of that QR code and let them know you heard about it on Sidelines. Matt, you heard Gary, talking right there. So glad we missed him the last couple of weeks. And he's just one of the biggest reasons this show is succeeding is because we have a great team. It ain't about me. It's not about any one individual. It's about a great team. And so I'm so glad having you back. But jump back in here, Matt.
No, Gary, I just want to say it's great to see you. I follow you on social media. Even though we've never met in person, I'm a huge fan, and I saw the video you dropped the other day, and just really happy for your good news and thinking of you, and prayers out, just like John said. I wanted to ask you a quick question. I was watching Arkansas and Alabama last Saturday night, and I was thinking of you, and I was like, probably my first time I took away from that game that, you know what, you had just mentioned this. Alabama has some runs of defense that are very impressive. Like that game, it was like a 1-point game. Arkansas fought back in the first half, and there was literally a stretch at the end of the first half, and probably, Gary, the first 10 minutes of the second half, Alabama flat out just won me over. Like, I know they're really, really good, but I'm like, hey, this team can do it on both ends of the floor. And then Arkansas went furiously in about a 5-minute stretch to come back from probably around 20 points down.
Yeah, 20 down.
They have the ball 83-80 side out of bounds. I thought Nate Oates made a good decision. They fouled before they can get the 3-point attempt off. And of course, they missed the foul shot, and then they made 2 to secure it. So I'm really impressed, looking forward to Saturday's game. And I'm kind of like you. I think Saturday's more important to Alabama because of the rematch that comes up later in the season. But, gosh, I just left there Saturday night thinking everyone's going to talk about Alabama's offense. And I agree with the whole turnover concept. That was one of my things as a head coach is we don't have to shoot the ball as well as if we don't turn it over. So when Alabama has, limited turnovers, man, they are almost really impossible to stop.
I agree, and I appreciate your sentiments on the defense because this isn't a situation here where Nate Oates just says, maybe like Paul Westhead did years ago at Loyola Marymount, that we're just going to score,
Right.
and we don't care if you score because we're going to score more. That's not what's happening here. They do stress defense. They're trying to play good defense. They're trying to get on the backboard, and that's how you're able to score 103 and win by 23 because you still guard the other team. And are they the best defensive team in the country? No, but it's not lost in what they're trying to do as a team. They stress it, they work it, they emphasize it. You're right, especially in critical situations. They work on not allowing you to get the shot that you want, making you shoot from a different area. And like you said the other night too, I agree with you too. When you're up 3, don't let that team get a 3-point look. I agree. It worked out great for Alabama too. There's no doubt. Of course, if you lose the game, then you say, well, why did you foul? But, I think that they stress the complete game and understanding that, again, I know I had Ryan Pannone, their assistant, on Monday, and he talked about how hard they work on limiting the turnovers. But so far, you're this deep into the season, this team turns the ball over. They just do. You try to limit them the best you can. So I think they understand that, they're going to turn it over some. They've got to guard you. And, offensively, when they're making the shots, you're right. They're hard to handle. So if they could just get the turnovers down, like I said, maybe to 9 or 10 a game, they're going to be really, really good.
And hearing you talk about Alabama has that high ceiling, scoring 85 points or more in 8 consecutive road games. I mean,
hard to do.
That cannot be lost.
Doesn't happen.
That just doesn't happen. And I was watching Alabama at Texas. It's cool getting to see. I mean, I've always watched Texas, watched Oklahoma. We all have, but now they're in the conference. It's personal. It's like they have married into our family. So there's a son-in-law or daughter-in-law, whatever you want to say. That was a big win. Rodney Terry's teams, they play their ass off, and then they kind of just go into a lull, and then they try to make it all up. It's kind of like the people that work hard the first part of the semester, skip class, hang out at the beach, just don't go to class, and they try to make it up at the end. It's very difficult to do that. This game Saturday, just looking at it, 103 points, by the way, on the road. That is damn hard to do. Nate Oates just keeps getting everything out of his guys. And Mark Sears, he's not having the kind of year I think he had last year, but maybe that's because they're more of a balanced team. But, God, yeah, you hit 17 threes and you lose. That's like rushing the ball for 400 yards and losing. You can pass the ball for 400 and get your brains beat in, but you very often, if never, lose when you rush for 400. Gary, if you look at the SEC, and this time last year we were hearing a lot of the same, terms and phrases thrown around: epic, historically great, unparalleled, unbelievable. Never seen anything like it, but it did not translate and transfer into NCAA success. The Gators went out to Colorado in the first round. Auburn lost to Yale in the first round. Give me all the reasons you want. Either you win or you lose. What's so different? I'll start with you, Gary, and then Matt. What is so significantly just different about the SEC right now versus a year ago?
Yeah, I just think it's better. I mean, I think you look at Alabama, Auburn, and Florida, the three teams you mentioned, they're all better than they were last year. And they were good, and it's just a lot of those guys came back. And then you look at the depth of the league and you look at what the conference has done outside of the conference, the pre-conference schedule. They just dominated people. And I just think the depth of the league is so strong. Let's say you get 12 teams in, you get 13 teams in. I mean, I think it's reasonable to believe that, I will be disappointed if they don't have 4 teams in the Sweet 16 or possibly even more. I just think it's that good a league. I just think it's that good. And, I look at a team like South Carolina that may not win a conference game. They're not a bad basketball team. They lost another tough one last night. They're not a bad team. We saw that in their non-conference. It was some of the wins that they had. But in the league, they can't win a game. And, and on the other side, all the good teams that we have, and then you have teams like Missouri and Texas A&M. It's not out of the realm to believe that those teams potentially, if they got a good draw, I think are talented enough to make it to the Final Four. And they're not I'm not picking them to go to the Final Four, but you got so much depth in this league. I mean, you got Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Tennessee that I think everybody looks at as legit Final Four caliber teams. But then you've got A&M and you've got Missouri. And you've got Ole Miss, you got Kentucky, those teams, which might be maybe on the next tier, are Final Four capable. So I just think the league's that good. I think that's why they're going to do better in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, Gary's right, as always. Here's my 3 things: depth, coaching, and NBA talent. Okay? We've got – there's great coaching going on at different venues in this league. I think Buzz Williams – I watched that Missouri game the other night when they hit a shot basically by the second go to beat them. I think it was 67-64, just a rock fight, physical. Then you can go to Alabama. They can score 100 anytime on you, like Gary said. And then you look at a team like Florida that scores 44 against Tennessee and then comes back and beats Auburn in like a shootout. So different styles of play, great coaching, incredible talent. Gary's right. I would say 12 to 13 is not out of the possibility. I also say this. Don't be surprised if one of those teams that, is in that 9, 10, 11, 12 spot that gets taken makes a run at the Sweet 16 too. I wouldn't want to play Texas A&M in the NCAA tournament.
No.
Are you kidding me? And they're going to probably be like a 4 seed because they're really good. But I'm even saying like Missouri. Gary, I'm curious. Vanderbilt has a really good resume when you look at quad one.
Vanderbilt, Ole Miss.
Ole Miss.
Those teams could get you, man. They could clip you in the NCAA tournament.
They were dead in the water at LSU the other night, who's now 1-10 in the league, and they go on a 13-0 run to end the game to win 72-70. And that's another thing. Chris Beard and Buzz Williams have some similarities in like how they like to coach and play the game of basketball. But I think that's what makes it fun. I've always been a Bruce Pearl fan. I grew up with Dr. Tom Davis at Iowa. He was Dr. Tom's assistant all the way back to Boston College days. Bruce is not afraid to play any tempo. And I think that's another thing. I go back to Alabama's defense. When you have a team like Alabama that can guard you in the half court, that also understands situational basketball and can beat you down the court, it is a nightmare to prepare for a team like Alabama. I'll tell you another thing the other night I was thinking, Gary, when it was 83-80, I think it was a missed free throw. I was surprised Calipari took the timeout because it allowed Nate to basically say, okay, guys, we're going to do this. We're going to follow them right here. I thought they may either attack the rim to make it a 1-point game with like 6 seconds ago or pull up, take a 3 to send it to overtime. I was really surprised because Calipari's the best, but that timeout allowed Nate Owens to say, okay, situational basketball, whatever our rule is, we're going to follow this person away from the basket.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey,
and there's
Gary,
also just an example of how good the league is from the standpoint that Alabama's up 20, as Matt said earlier, and still up 18, I think, with under 8 to go.
You're right.
And,
you're right.
Arkansas got back in that game. And, of course, Alabama helped them. Last thing you want to do with a big lead is foul. Yeah. Although I talked to Ryan Pannone, he thought, some of those foul calls were a little bit questionable. But you put a team at the line And consistently, several trips in a row, they're getting points without time coming off the clock. But that's another thing. A game's really never over in this conference. I mean, you know, the game's changed a lot with how many points people score. But I can remember 20 years ago, you know, if you were up 10 with 3 or 4 minutes to go, you thought, you know, the game was over.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
you sweat it out, man.
Go to the Grizzlies games. The game doesn't start until the fourth quarter in the NBA.
It's for sure.
It's unreal.
100%.
Gary, I know you got your show coming up at 9:00. What are you going to be talking about today? And let people know how they can follow you as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk more basketball for sure. Bart Heights, you know, Mississippi State Final Four point guard, and does a lot of media now. Heights on Hoops is going to join us, break it all down. And also Jeff Spiegel, my friend from ABC 3340. Yep. And we're going to, you know, take phone calls like we always do. That's at 9:00 on Tide 100.9 FM, Tide109.com. You can download the app. On the TV side, I was off yesterday, but I'll be back on tonight. It's WVUA 23. We have an app for the TV side as well if people want to download it, because we get a lot of people that do want to watch us that live in other parts of the country because they either went to Alabama or they're Alabama fans and they want to keep up on what's going on in Tuscaloosa. So we have an app for WVUA 23 or WVUA23.com. We stream. For me on social media, I'm only on Twitter and Facebook. On Twitter, it's at Gary Harris _WVUA. And then on Facebook, Gary Harris WVUA 23. And the Facebook page, the professional page, has really grown. I'm closing in on 15,000 followers and been putting out a lot of content. So I'd love for people to follow me there. And I appreciate it. Enjoyed being with you guys.
Absolutely. Glad to have you back.
See you.
Take care. We'll see you next week. All right. Great stuff. Great insight, Matt. And so let me say something real quick too. Landers Ford, they are at Poplar and Houston Levy out in Collierville, LandersFordMemphis.com. Take $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members. Great service department. If you've got your vehicle's got to be serviced, they will pick you up and provide round-trip transportation. They have 3 dedicated drivers who do just that. Look at all of the savings coming up here. President's Day, by, you know, MSRP, they will take a lot of money off. They will work with you on your financing. Brad Bellamy, the general manager. Kenny Myers is out there now. Those of you from Memphis, CBHS alum, 41 years in the car business, truck business, SUV business. Kenny Myers, they broke the mold when they made that guy. He's as good as it gets. Landers Ford is open every day except Sunday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They back what they sell. And also right down the street from our good friends at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. Man, they got a 50% off sale going on with Pendleton, Schaefer, Ariat. They've got Filson, Duckhead. My goodness. You're going to go out there and find Duck Camp. Also, a selection of boots for men and women. I got Audrey a pair of ostrich boots. They are good looking. I got them for Valentine's for her at Hewlett & Dunn. Great looking Barber, Filson clothing, luggage, Filson, STS. Unbelievable selection of purses, hiking boots, work boots, Danner. These Danner trail shoes I'm wearing right now are fantastic. You can run in these things. I wear them everywhere. They're as durable and tough as it gets. Men, women, and kids, Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you got to put a roof on your house, My Town Roofing, Corey Carter, Major Fusel, Chris Fiedler, the great folks there, they put the roof on the house here where I am at the Cherry Farm on a 7,000 square foot house. They were there at 6:27 a.m. Wednesday, and by 3 o'clock the next day, they had stripped it and put the new roof on. Unbelievable folks to work with. My Town Roofing. Peace of mind. They've got a massive crew that will get out, take care of business, and get your roof on. Let them know you heard about them on SEC Sidelines. And guys, one other thing. If you've got a dog and it's duck season just wrapped up, nobody really uses a turkey dog, maybe a turkey leg, but not a turkey dog. Chris Aiken, my good friend, Web-Footed Kennels, Jonesboro, Arkansas, the best trainer in America for the hunting dogs. labs. He even took my friend Del Marsh from down in Anniston, took his German wire hair and had it doing 150 and 200-yard marks. Chris Aiken has 7 people on his staff, maybe 8, on a 237-acre pristine training grounds there in Jonesboro. Technical ponds, lakes, hills, everything. Web-footed kennels. Damn proud to be associated with them. Matt, as we wrap up, let me say this. What insight you bring to the table. And now that I know you're a bowler, I love bowling. Bowling is fun.
It's fun, man.
Everybody, when we were kids, everybody had bowling parties for birthdays.
You know, I think Maury Gaston had made a comment, too, about the 87-year-old cancer survivor that recently rolled a 300 perfect game. I saw that yesterday on the news as well. So I wanted to give a shout out to him because I think that's remarkable. Just, beating cancer and rolling a perfect game. 2 very difficult things to do, but very excited for that survivor.
Absolutely. And Matt, if you are available, we'll go to lunch today at 11:30, 12 o'clock.
Call me a text. Last time you told me that.
I'm coming this week. I didn't know. I will call you right after the show.
Let me know.
For executive producer Brendan Martin, unbelievable the graphics and the information he puts up here, keeping me on task. Thank God we got him. Catch the Buddy Martin Show tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern on this channel, as it is every Monday through Thursday. And our new joint venture with AU Undercover, we have a show Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. Rob Browne, myself, Ronnie Sanders, and Doug Dean. We put a great show out Tuesday. It's here on the channel. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Find excuses to win, people. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.